So this is good that you brought this up. So looking at this partial fasting cheat sheet. So this week we're going to talk about 511 and we're going to talk. So 511 is 5 days of intermittent, 1 day fasted and 1 day feasted. If someone's not ready for a 24-hour to go dinner to dinner, they could use this partial fasting cheat sheet. And do you see how the macros we want, how we were talking about lowering the protein intake to less than 15 to 20 grams. So 20
Right.
for a male, 15 for a female, right? Grams. So that would keep you in that like 5-10%. And then, carbs are not going to be too high and then you can have good fats, but we want to keep you under that like 1100 calories, which keeps you in this partially fasted state. So women, I'll typically say like 800, and then men could go up to as much as 1100. But
So
that's
this,
just for a partial. Oh, sorry, Ed.
so if I'm actually fasting, this would be the alternative to an actual fast.
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, because I read that, I thought, boy, have I screwed up week 3?
Oh no, you totally haven't. So I'll explain for everybody that just came in. So Rod had found the partial fasting cheat sheet, which is on week four's information. And the partial fasted day is if you're not ready to go dinner to dinner, you can follow that partially fasted. So it gives us some caloric intake, very little protein. So 15 grams if you're a female, 20 if you're a male. And then we stay between like 700 and 1100 calories, 1100 if you're a male, around 800 if you're a female. And that can be, and you can have good oils. We're just kind of staying in that caloric kind of range. But it gives you some food intake, but it won't take you out of that fasted state because you're getting very little protein and you're not calorically really pushing yourself high during that day. So it's very minimalistic. And so that's a way that we can partially fast and increase cell autophagy, but we're not in a fully, like you're not doing a full water kind of fast during that day.
So if I'm doing a straight up fast, this is irrelevant.
That would be irrelevant. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
saw that. I thought, man, I've just really hosed week 3.
oh no, you totally didn't know. Perfect. I'm so glad. So let's talk about wins and like how your fasting window went. So like Rod, what was your start and stop times and were you able to be kind of consistent with those times?
Consistency, no, not really, because we had some events going on.
Hmm.
Um, I'd say my low fasting period was like eating window was like a couple hours.
Okay.
My normal was probably around 6 hours, maybe 5.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think if I stretched anything this week beyond that. I mean, because I've been doing intermittent fasting a long time,
Yeah.
so it's kind of a no-brainer. And then my 915 Orange Theory is like a godsend because I go over there and get abused for an hour, and then by the time I get home and think about anything, it's already somewhere between 11 something and noon. So,
Uh-huh.
and if I've cut off somewhere between 4 and 6 the day before, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah. How did you look at your numbers? Did you play with that, like playing a little bit like an hour beforehand?
Do you remember that interkinetics book I gave you?
Yeah, I have it. I'm reading
Yeah.
it.
I'm not one of those SJ types who keeps records. I kind of wing it, and I've
Okay.
got so I don't know. I think I'm doing okay. I'm just not real good at writing stuff down.
Don't necessarily need to write stuff down. The interesting thing would be for us to look at is like, okay, let's say 1 day you go 6 hours and then we like checking our ketones and glucose, and then 1 day going 5 hours and just seeing how your body likes the difference between the two. Because, right, if ketones are dropping, we might be stressing you a little bit too far going to the 5 hours versus the 6 hours on the feeding window. And that would be my only curiosity is looking like, are the ketones still rising? Is glucose stabilized or still lower, or do we see it starting to raise? And that would just be the intrigue. Like, it's just an intriguing to find that kind of personalized window.
Well,
So,
the answer is
and
I
just
have
like
not
make
been a
note
very
of
good
it.
patient.
I won't force you to write it down. I'll let you like keep it up here
Okay.
in your internal dialogue.
Yeah, well, I wear my ADHD with pride.
See, what you do is you tell your wife what it was, and then you come back the next day and you go, was that better or worse?
Oh no, she's worse than me on this.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell my sister-in-law what it was. That'll be good. She's a rules Nazi.
See, you just put it in the Facebook group and then you just load it in there and you're going to go, I don't even know. And then the next day you put it in and you go, okay, this was my time frame. And then we'll tell you. So then you have documentation.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Is
Yeah.
Facebook like MySpace?
It's kind of, but it's better.
Did I miss the MySpace wagon? I'm sorry.
Don't worry, I never got on it.
Okay, so much for the humor.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Well, you're on a roll. Okay, Miss Sheila, since you're my next in line there.
Okay, so I did learn something new this last week. What I was doing with my fasting window was my eating window was 12 to 6. And
Okay.
so I would end at 6 and then the next day would be fasting. So the following day I wouldn't start eating until 12, which was where my intermittent window was.
Hmm.
But by looking at the numbers, what I found was that was that I was starting to stress myself out, my body in the morning, and so I needed to break the fast earlier. And then
Ah,
when I broke it and started with protein, my glucose started going down. So, so I learned that to not have that long of the fasting window was more detrimental to me than helpful.
beautiful. So that's exactly what we want to learn about ourselves is are we going a little too long? Or the other side of that, are we not going long enough? So, if for some of us, if ketones aren't rising, we might be going a little bit, we're not going long enough. And the other is we might get that rise in ketones, but now we go too far and now we start to lose that rise again. So we just
Yeah.
gonna stay within that. And that it's a big jump when as you were doing like 3-2-1 or 3-2-2 um to go into that 36 hours, 24 versus 36 is a bigger difference. And so your body might just be
Hmm.
like, 30 is where we are. And that's what we just have to abide. And it
Yeah.
can,
I just wasn't sure how to figure out how the next day to have it be an intermittent fasting day if I didn't keep my window after the fast. So I wasn't
uh,
sure.
yeah, what you do is you just break, because it's still going to be like, let's say you broke at say 10 o'clock or whatever, you still can go from 10 to 6 and you'd have more of an 8-hour window versus a 6-hour window. And that's fine. And that's
Okay.
like, let's say you just do 2 meals in that time.
Hmm.
You're still getting that well time off food, but we didn't stress yourself to the point where, we were starting to have cortisol raise.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
beautiful. And you might be a little bit just because you got over being sick. There might be this
Hmm.
pure adjustment period. And, for some people, when after we get sick, it takes us like 4, 5, 6 weeks to start feeling like our normal human again. And you may
Yep.
notice after that adjustment period that the body goes back. And, you've been hiking a lot more. So just like those two stressors together might just tell your
Hmm.
body, nope, we gotta go a little earlier. So I'm proud
Okay.
of you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Miss Whitney, my next in line.
Hello.
Hello.
My week is good. Let's see. I'm finding like so the window's easier for me, but it's just because I've been doing it for so long.
Hmm.
I just kind of listen to my body and I work usually like a 6 to 8 hour window ish. The thing I've been struggling with, and this is not new, is protein. Like I
Ah.
should be getting. So I went when I was there the other day. I embodied myself. And at 109 pounds of lean body mass, I should be eating a ton of protein.
Right,
And
about 80. Hmm.
I really hate eating that much protein. It's really unpleasant. So, um, yeah, it's like it's getting enough protein and getting enough calories within the window and
Hmm.
within just that I'm willing to eat. You know what I mean? Like I just don't want to eat that much.
Yeah, 40 grams of protein can be kind of a lot. And you may find that you may during that window. So let's say it's like an 8-hour window that you might want to do something 3 times, like do two bigger sides of protein and then do one smaller one in between. And I know that feels like you're eating all the time during that
Yeah.
time. But it may, especially if you have higher active days, that might be the better way of doing it, or getting some like aminos in the middle,
Oh, that's a good one. Okay.
because that is kind of like a cheat way to get 20 grams, is it with a scoop of the total aminos.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that might really support, your hormones in your gut and your muscle, just doing those aminos in the middle, and that might feel better.
Okay, that's a good idea. I do a couple scoops of collagen.
Okay.
So that helps. That's another same boat. That's another 20 grams. But
Hmm.
what I've heard and read is that collagen should always be like on top of your protein allotment. Like it shouldn't
Yes.
substitute your protein. Yeah. So I'm going, well, I can't win.
And I think if you let's say you were getting in 60 grams or something, and then you supplemented with some collagen and supplemented with some aminos, I think we wouldn't lose that muscle mass, right? We kind of support it through that. So giving it kind of building blocks, but then not feeling like overload that you're intaking so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So see how that works over the next the next 2 weeks, and we can invite again and just see for fun.
Cool.
Beautiful. Awesome. Good job. Christina.
My week was pretty good. I kind of was writing down some numbers, not super consistent at the end of the day, but my numbers were kind of all over the place. I started testing like an hour after I got to work, like we had talked
Hmm.
about last week. And so that varied because like um when Wednesday it was like really high. Well, it was like 120. But then
Okay.
the next day it was 85. Um, and like the next day it was interesting because I checked it, it was 85, and then I ate lunch around 1, and the glucose went up a little bit, but the ketones went up too. So
Okay.
like I don't, and I'm kind of seeing that be a little bit of a trend. So I don't know what that necessarily means.
How high are your ketones getting?
Let's see. I think the highest I wrote down, I don't have them all written down, was this past week was 1.6.
Okay. I'm wondering if you're having a little cortisol response, like, just from daily, like getting up, going, getting in the office, like a big variation. Again, like you're consistent about the types of things you're eating when you're going to bed, all that kind of stuff. But big difference between 120 and 85, waking up and then like getting to work. Um, but because your ketones are rising, I'm just wondering if we're having a little cortisol response, if that's why the glucose is kind of elevating, even though the ketones are there. Um, do you feel like a underlying like anxious energy at all?
I mean, I will say sometimes during this week, like before I would test it or before lunch, I would just have like a crazy period at work.
Hmm.
And I thought, okay, maybe that's affecting it. I'm still checking it anyway, just because I'm gonna eat. So this week that's very possible because there was a lot of, there's periods at work that are just kind of calm, and then there's periods that are a little bit
Rush.
crazier. So,
But then you're finding that your evenings are much more consistent.
um, yeah, yep.
And cortisol naturally drops, right around 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That would be another interesting thing to see what your glucose does like around 3, 4 o'clock. Because hormones go lower, cortisol goes lower during that time. I really think this is probably a cortisol response with you that's going on. We could always check a blood marker if you wanted. It might be interesting just to see kind of what a morning cortisol is doing, because you may shoot up really high, and there's some things we could kind of do adaptogenically to kind of support your response to outside stress. We'll never get away from, the bad emails and phone calls and stuff, but how our body responds to it. Sometimes one person's body can be calling 911 and the other person's body is hiding in the hole, and we all respond to stress differently, and over time we've all been kind of conditioned that um, everything is really important, and we've got to be doing all the things all at once, and so we can get this really revved up cortisol reaction. And there's ways that we can kind of help mitigate and calm those things, because we can't meditate all the way through work, although we would probably like to. You get the bad phone call and you're like, uh,
Yeah.
they would enjoy that, right? But
Yep.
it really does sound cortisol-esque to me. And I think that's why
Okay.
you're probably getting that big fluctuation in the morning time and into that kind of afternoon period, like,
Yeah, and I
before I had lunch.
yeah, and I will say, because for a while, I think I told you last week, I'm taking that cortisol calm twice a day.
Hmm.
And there are days, like today was one of them, where I leave work at 3 and I'm driving home, and like I'm definitely just I feel just that drop of energy.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's
Yeah, I
yeah.
bet you that's our just crashing out and kind of hormones. How old are you, Christine?
47.
47. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes hormonally, the only reason why I ask that is just we might have and our hormones are lowest between kind of 2, 3 in the afternoon. Um, if, let's just say that estrogen, progesterone aren't really robust, we can kind of get a little bit of a fallout with with both cortisol and your hormones at time. So you can feel this big fluctuation between the two. And that kind of drain, just like, oh my gosh, I don't have anything left. If the hormones aren't quite robust enough, and that's you might
Hmm.
see that. But if you're ever interested and you want to do like just like a blood marker in the morning, super easy. I can send it to LabCorp.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think it'd be good, valid information. And we might use there's another product called Calm by Body Bio that has phosphatidylserine, and that's really good for cortisol, high cortisol as well. We just use more in the morning time. All right, Kayla.
Okay.
Okay, so I did take notes this time. And the glucose for morning was 87 the first day, and then zero point 0.7 for ketones.
Beautiful,
And then the last time it was 82 for glucose, and ketones were 1.3.
beautiful. And that was before you ate?
Yes.
Gorgeous.
And I
Okay.
have been doing like breakfast at 7, last meal at 3, 3:30, because I just do love my breakfast.
Hey,
And
you
I
can
don't want to eat
totally
at
be,
work.
yeah, no, you totally can be opposite. I actually am a big fan. Like, I like to eat earlier and I'd rather stop earlier. It's really just people that like you to eat later. Family members want you to have dinner with them. But no, I totally, you can make that other end of the spectrum. So that is absolutely fine to finish early.
Okay, and then I have a question. If I go to the gym, it's just that I'm training with someone and that person
Hmm.
is like worried, like after you train, you need to drink protein or get some protein. I'm like, but I'm done eating for the day because I can
Hmm.
go to the gym like at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So what do I do, or if that's okay?
Yep. So you could have some aminos if you wanted. There's a brand that's called Perfect Aminos. You could have a scoop of that, which would be supportive for your muscle. Um, we don't necessarily always have to feed our, like, we've all been conditioned like you must have protein within 30 minutes. They've actually debunked this multiple times. And women actually can do really well fasted post-workout. So I don't get too, what we could do is, especially like as we go into this week when we talk about feast, famine, variation, and we'll play with your day with this, but we could use the aminos, the amino drink afterwards on like regular days. But when we do the feast day, we should couple your feast day with where your workout is too, because then you could double up with protein like post workout on that day, and we'll talk about what that could look like. Yeah. But yeah, don't feel like you have to, have 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes, because it's really not the God's truth. Yeah. And women do actually do really well fasted post workout.
Okay.
Yeah. Men tend to do better with a fasted pre-workout and then eating post to reserve. And women actually can do good with a like food before workout and then fasted post.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just different creatures. How many days do you work out with trainer?
3.
3? Okay. All right, I am going to share my screen.
Hey, Maria, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
You, I think of things like proteins and carbs and fats.
Uh-huh.
Pardon my ignorance, but what's an amino?
No, good question. So an amino, 1,000 aminos make up a protein. So they're the building blocks for that protein or for the muscle. And there's different types of muscle in the body. So there's, like your skeletal muscle versus heart versus your GI muscle. And different aminos are building blocks for different tissue types. And what we know, so classically, most of us have seen branch chain amino acids, right? So we've seen leucine, isoleucine, valine, methionine. Those are your typical branch chains. So we know that those specific aminos build up skeletal muscle. And it's typically why you'll see bodybuilders use branch chain. I like complete aminos because most all of us need to serve our brain and our hormones and our gut and our muscle. So I'll typically use a wider spectrum complete amino acid like perfect aminos. So they're not the only one out there, but it's the one that I think is really nice and people like most.
Okay.
So yeah, good question. Yeah, they're the building blocks for your muscle.
And follow-up question, actually kind of for Sheila.
Uh-huh.
She talked about doing the collagen. When I did the collagen last week or whenever it was, week before, it seemed to blow me completely out of ketosis.
Yeah. What kind of collagen do you have?
Stuff in a jar.
I
I don't know.
just wondered if there was some type of additive in it, if it was like a mix or a blend or
Well,
um
supposedly it was, I don't know really what, I'd have to go read the label, but it supposedly was healthy and all that stuff.
you have I think yours the naked collagen.
You know what? I think that might be it.
I feel like I remember your wife showing me that. Um it may I'm just wondering if it was like the protein that took you out, but I remember you told me that it took you out for a while.
Like a whole day.
Yeah, which is very peculiar. I don't know. I wonder if you would do the same thing with like casein or and because collagen is really typically only 10 grams of protein per scoop. So it's not,
And I took 2 scoops, so
so it's 20. I wonder with your total protein intake for the day, the collagen put you over the top.
could be.
Like put you like instead of kind of being 60% or like what I would I say like 40% on your protein, it took you like over towards 50% or something, like if it was taking you out of ketosis because it was too much protein over what you had already consumed.
Could be. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It was the only part I could tie into it was the collagen.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if it was the collagen itself. We'd have to experiment with that where we did it with like let's say you had a little less meat-based protein and then you had the collagen on that day, did it not take you out of ketosis or does it still take you out no matter how much smaller you intake with like what the meat product that you're eating?
Yeah. Okay.
So that would be a fun thing to kind of play with. Okay. All right. This is where stuff gets fun, guys. Let's see. There we go. Talked about our wins. And then, so this week we're going to start to work into our 511, and this is where we'll start to have, we're going to tap into deeper subcutaneous fat storages because we're going to start to really push ketones up higher as we have our fasted day, and we're continuing our consistency with our personal feeding window. So I've said this before, but all diets are the right diet for the time, diagnosis, and season. And when it comes to science, they're all correct. There's no really magic in the diet itself, but the dietary shift. And the dietary shift that we create, it forces the body to adapt and it also changes our microbiome. So certain people have done incredibly well with Whole30, or they've gone vegan, or they, done keto. But it was when someone is successful, it's right for their microbiome during that time. And when we look at our ancestors, it was all feast famine. They were really forced to, go hunt and look for food, and there wasn't food until they found it, right? So in that, our DNA is really programmed for that feast famine variation. We're not meant to be eating all the time. And when we start to create this adaptation, we start to optimize our hormones, and our body's innate intelligence wants to survive at all costs. So when it feels threatened, you will start to have increased heart rate. It will bring blood into your muscles, and it will also increase something called norepinephrine. And this is something that can help us reverse insulin resistance. So increasing norepinephrine, and norepinephrine increases hormone sensitivity, because if we have to run from an animal, it's going to pique its spidey sense, and try to get our hormones to be at the forefront and the ready. And norepinephrine will increase fat adaptation. It preserves lean muscle mass. And we release this because of an abrupt diet shift. And this is one of our keys to weight loss. So like alternate day fasting is a way that we would cause norepinephrine to release, and then it would stop releasing, and then would cause it to release. This norepinephrine will also increase luteinizing hormone, which is a precursor to testosterone, but it's also a precursor to estrogen and progesterone. So it tells either your ovaries or your gonads to start secreting hormone. So if we could put norepinephrine in like a nasal spray or something, that'd be amazing, right? Okay. So 511. So 5 days of intermittent, 1 day fasted, 1 day feasted is the cycle that we're going to start to go into during this week. And when we start to look at our feasting day, we're going to increase, which I like people to play with this. So this week and next week we'll have something called a 4-2-1. And on your feasted day, I like you to play with increased carbohydrates this week or next week. And then on the alternate week, I want you to increase protein on that week, because that will also take you out of ketosis. And our goal on our feast day is to actually take you out of ketosis, because we're trying to replenish glycogen storages. And that's really an important concept to know. We can't always stay in a glycogen depleted state. You will get to a point where you will have to break. Your body is going to start to crave glucose and sugars and carbohydrates to replace that glycogen storage. And that is a point when we start to have low glycogen for long, long periods of time, we actually will harm our hormones at this point. So, men typically can do 1 meal a day kind of thing for long, long periods. But I do think that we'll start to see immune system start to run down, but women, we will get very hormonally disrupted very quickly doing something like that. So this type of feast famine is where we start to really tap into our mitochondria, and we start to get into that deeper into that fat storage. And after a 15-hour fast, we start to tap into that cell autophagy. So we're going to have more of that increasing and destroying cellular debris is what I meant to say, destroying bad white cells. Those will start to die off. And this is where we're going to start to have an increased stem cell production. And you can choose any day of the week that would be easiest for you. So you don't have to do these back to back. You don't have to do feast day, 1 day, famine day, another day. You could have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday could be intermittent. You could do a feast day on Thursday. You could have another intermittent day on Friday, and then fast on Saturday, and then intermittent back on Sunday. So they can be on opposite sides of the week. You can kind of pick how you want to put them on. And Saturday night is usually a night that ends up being date night. So if that's going to be your feast day, make that your feast day. Or if someone wants to go to brunch on Sunday and you want that to be your feast day, you can choose, but make it work for your schedule. with your 24-hour, you're going to go dinner to dinner. So say you ate dinner at 6 p.m., you're going to eat again at the next dinner at 6 p.m. the next night. This is the point where we talked about the partial. And on your fasted day, you can also do the partial fast. So you can look at that partial fasted cheat sheet and really look at that kind of calorie count and making sure the protein is within that, 15 to 20 grams. And that's really that keeps the body in that fasted state. This will stimulate when we do our feast day, we're going to stimulate mTOR. So when we replace those glycogen storages, mTOR is going to increase growth hormone. It's a very anabolic state. So we're tapping ourselves out of ketosis. We're creating more of this building, replacing the glycogen, and then we'll go back into our intermittent state. So this is kind of a breakdown on a partial fast. So 500 to 800 calories, as high as 1100, that is really max. And then you can still use a feeding window during this time. It's like, let's say it's 11 to 6. And then during that 11 to 6, you'll have that caloric intake, 15 to 20 grams of protein. You can use MCT oils, good fats during this period. Just be careful of the caloric window during that time, just because oils are higher calories. So we'll really be working on our mitochondrial fitness during this time, even though we're in this partial state. You'll actually see your ketones rise quite a bit during this. So tapping into that kind of feast day. So you choose the day, and you do not need to have a feeding window during this time. You could start, the moment you get up if you want, and eat until you go to sleep if you want. You might not feel good. Increased carbs, you're going to be looking at, say, something from 100 to 150 carbohydrates. That will feel like a lot of carbs. And if you choose protein, what I would typically have you do is choose something like, let's say, 100 to 120 grams of protein, which will feel like a lot. And you can lower your fat intake. Like, you don't have to do 222 on this day. And you can have lower fat intake just so you can get that protein intake in, just because the fat will be satiating, and it will be really hard to push the protein on that day if you don't lower your fat intake. And then really during this day, we're reminding the body that it's not starving and that we're going to be giving it food. So it really wants to continue to burn, knowing that it's going to get its food. It's not in a starved state, and that we do this by replacing that glycogen storage. Many people really stunt their metabolic rate because they cut back, and they don't actually have good protein or good fat intake. And so the body always is believing it's starving, and then it's never quite going to get its fuel. And so we're reminding that it's going to get its fuel. I'm curious on this day if the carbs feel better or the protein feels better. And that's just information. One's not really better than the other. One person could feel much, much better with the carbs, and the other person could feel very tired from the carbs, and it may make them feel puffy and icky. And it's really just that it's really individualized. So for 5 days, this is just a recap, but 5 days, you're going to be on your typical ketogenic. You're going to be checking your ketones and your glucose, and you're going to stay in your same window, that 5-6 hours, kind of where you guys have been. And then continue your 222 on these days. When one day of the week you're going to choose as your fasted day. So it's either going to be your partial fast, or you're going to go dinner to dinner. And then you're going to have your feasted day. You're going to either choose protein or carbs to increase much higher than you normally would, and you can lower your fat content on that day. Any questions about that? No? Okay. All right, so this is what your week could look like. So you can kind of choose which ones, so you can see like eating window, here's a famine day, eating window, and then a feast day on Saturday, and then an eating window. So you can break it up however you want. But I do like you to split up like the feast and the famine day, just because we're causing ourselves to go in and out of ketosis, and that gentle fluctuation is starting to get us more adapted. And this is just kind of your sample menu, kind of looking at your kind of 2 meals a day, what we would be putting in. Okay. Okay. So questions on feast or famine? Everybody's ready for feast?
Question, famine day, you don't do the 222 at all, just strictly water?
Correct, yep. You can, if you want, like a little, like if you're having a problem during the day, you could have like a little tablespoon of MCT oil or something like that. It's not going to take you out of your fast, and it'll only drive your ketones up.
Will the cream and coffee mess it up at all, or is it okay?
It typically, as long as your coffee's not really making your if you tested your ketones and glucose with coffee and caffeine's not really spiking your cortisol, then you should be fine.
Okay. On the feast day, do you do the 222?
Nope, you don't need to. Yeah. I want you, if you like, especially if you're choosing, I don't really care so much if you're choosing carbohydrates, but if you're choosing protein, I like you to cut on back on your fat a little bit, just because I want you to not get satiated early. I want you to be able to eat your protein. Like, oh, and because the whole idea is to take you out of ketosis. So I really want you to push the protein. I don't want it to be like, your typical protein intake. I want it to be more than you typically would do with protein.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. And that's really just to break that ketosis. Yeah. And I will tell you that every person, every person that's done this and is increased carbohydrates, that were not like, let's say like potatoes and yams and zucchinis, if they chose like pizza and things like that, they did not like how it felt. So it's drastically different than what you've been doing. And so if you put something like that in, it might not settle so well. You might not sleep as well. Your stomach might not feel too nice. But typically higher carbohydrate vegetables, or let's say you had a little bit of oatmeal or beans or something like that, those tend to not cause a lot of problems. But yeah, if you definitely choose like bagels, you might not like it. And then then the fun thing is, as we go back into our intermittent windows, how quickly does it take you to get back into ketosis? And so kind of watching our numbers the next day, you will go back in. Sometimes when it's our first time, it takes us 2 days to go back in. But that is us teaching our body. That's what we want it to do. And so it becomes easier each time you do it. Gorgeous.
I'm
Who's ready?
sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
just have a question. This is my first time doing all this. I
Yeah.
am lost. So I will do 5 days what I'm doing right now.
Mhm.
Then one day that I don't eat anything at all.
So you can do a partial. So in
Um,
the stuff, there's the partial fasted cheat sheet. So you can follow the partial guide, and then like the next day you'll go right back into your intermittent. And you can split the days up. So like the way I had the calendar, like you could do, 2 days of intermittent, you could do one day fasted, and then you could have 2 more days of intermittent and one day feasted. So you can break it up however your schedule sees fit. So if you have something you want to do on Friday, like you want to go out with friends and you're going to go out to eat, make that your feasted day. So it doesn't have to necessarily be 5 intermittent, one fasted, one feasted, back to back like that. You can split them up in the week however you want.
okay.
So if it's simplest, like I always find for me, Monday is a great day to fast for me, or like a lot of times Sunday is, but it's a day that is easier for you to fast. Like kind of choose that as your fasted day, and you can absolutely follow the partial. And one, it it's getting confidence, and it's also teaching your body to adapt. So a lot of us had to use a partial to get going. So use it as a tool. Yeah. You can use like bone broth. Let's say you wanted to do some bone broth and some MCT oil and a little bit of avocado. And let's just say like some vegetable soup. Those are all great things, and it's not going to put you out of your protein window, and it's not going to take you out of your fasted state.
Okay.
Sound good? Okay. It's going to be easier than you think. She's like, I don't know about that. No, it's going to be good. Yeah. And I like to, sometimes I like to have a day where I'm kind of busier. That's why Monday's a nice day for me. It's just like I'm kind of busy and kind of things are moving. So it's kind of a day that I don't think as much
So
about.
Maria, right with that. A busy day for me would be for my fast would be Thursdays. I do Tumamuk 3 times, finish at 11, get off and volunteer um, from like 12:30 to 6. So there's lots of activity in the morning, Tumamuk 3 times, and then on my feet. So it's like a 35,000 step day. Um, is that too much? I can take the perfect aminos. So I
Mhm.
have that, and I haven't found that affects my glucose, or would it affect my glucose, and that would
Doesn't
not be for
typically,
fast.
yeah. Most people, it doesn't affect their glucose. Hmm.
So that would or would not put me out of my fast. That is too much to do on a fasted day. What do you think?
I I kind of want to not do that for your fasted day, only for the fact that I think it's too much stress on your system.
Because
Um,
last time I did it, it sent me into your
yeah, that's why I
into
feel
your
like we want to
fast.
choose a more gentle day. Let's choose a gentle day.
Gentle day.
My
Oh,
busy
okay.
day is not looking like that.
Okay, I had it on my two big hike days. So you're saying to not fast on my big days. So
Yeah, I'm not gonna
okay.
have you do that because I definitely think it's gonna be too much stress right now. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
trying to
I'll
nurture the
I'll
system.
adjust. Okay. Glad I
Good
asked.
question. Yes, good question. I know. I'll surprise see you in my office again.
That's right. Thanks.
You're welcome. Absolutely. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Do we all have the days we want to feast and famine? Yeah, mostly. Okay. Beautiful. All right. Well, I am looking forward. If you have any questions on like the partial fasted day or the feasted day, what is a thumbs up? When's the thumbs down? Show me your numbers. Rod, share your numbers as a diary, just so it's a way to keep track without keeping track. And then yeah, I'm excited to see how it went. Usually it's easier than we think. And it really you're more prepared than you think for your fasted day. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, very excited about this. And I will get this recording up. Um, For some reason, last week when I tried to do the recording, it was like taking forever. So I'm going to try to do it tonight because for some reason, I think in the morning it just took way too long on YouTube. Like it was, I had to like leave and it wasn't uploading. So, but I did it today and it did it in like 2 seconds. So I don't know what was going on that morning, but I will try to do it tonight so it's already done.
And Maria, can I ask you a CGM
Hmm.
question? So I got into a trail mix that I had bought for my husband, and it had dried fruit in it,
Uh-huh.
and I ate too much of it.
Uh-huh.
And
It was
so
delicious.
so good. Oh my gosh. My glucose went up to the highest I've seen it. It went up to 166
Yeah.
and very quickly dropped down to like 88, which I was like, wow, that's like insulin doing its job or something.
Yeah.
And then right away it went up to like 155 and then down. And it spiked and dropped down 5 times before it regulated. What is all that?
I my guess is it was going to stay elevated. Dried fruit is one of the worst things. It's like
Sugar.
straight candy. And there's some fiber and stuff in those trail mixes, right? So which can help kind of counter some of that. But I'm wondering if that's kind of why you were kind of going in and out as it was um as it was really kind of absorbing, because also you've got like fats and proteins, so it's going to kind of slow some of the release of that stuff. So I think that's why you kind of got that up and that down. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it was just, there was no gradual. It was up and down and up and down. And then,
yeah.
okay.
I know I always get nervous when people munch on that, just all day long, it's
It's not something that I do because I don't eat sugar. So of course my body definitely freaked out over what was in
uh-huh.
that. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it was
Okay.
totally blasted. You can use that on your feast day.
No, I don't give me that permission. That's to not ever have that. Sweet potatoes are a feast day.
Perfect. Perfect.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And if any of you, if any of you are ever curious about using a continuous glucose monitor, we can always get you one. It's fun to have because you don't have to poke yourself, but it kind of gives you this continuous eye of how your body responds, like after meals and stuff. And so they're kind of fun for information on how your body is responding to very particular things. And, as she was kind of telling you about her response with trail mix, like not everybody would have the exact same response as her, but like it's our digestive enzymes, how we break down carbs, proteins, and fats. I myself, mangoes, they're the highest thing, worse than beer. So but that was the biggest thing that was big, and the other thing I noticed is I had a part of this, and it was an organic peanut butter cookie, but it had flour, and I had like a quarter of this cookie, and I had problems with my glucose for 24 hours with, and and I had been on an 8 mile hike, so of course I kind of gave myself permission to have this part of this cookie, right? And I'm going, man, my body does not do good with white flours. Like it for multiple days, like it really responds to it. So, kind of learning that stuff about yourself is really important to know where you're like, up, I'm definitely going to pay for that if I decide to do that. And knowledge is power, right? We can't be ignorance is bliss in there. So yeah, if you're ever intrigued and want to try a CGM, I can get one for you.
They're really fun for the fasting week.
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommend.
Oh, which is when? What is the actual date for the fasting week?
Oh, it will be, I'll give you my calendar. It should be the 3rd, March 3rd.
That is really soon. Let's get it done, huh?
I know. Well, so next week is your
Oh, good.
is your 4-2-1, and then the following week is your fast. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
I know you're gonna be 5 weeks next week. Guys, it was just Christmas. It's March. It's gonna be March. No, the girls told me like, oh, Maria, we're not gonna have it's solution is on back order. We're not gonna have it till first till March. And I go, oh my. I'm thinking, oh, it's so far away. And she goes, Maria, it's in 2 weeks. So I was like, oh, okay, shoot. I was just thinking it was like February 1st. So that's about how far I'm behind.
Hey, Maria,
Yeah,
you know how long a minute is?
as long as I want to make it.
Just depends
60
on which side
seconds.
of the bathroom door you're on.
I like that.
Just a minute.
This is my dad joke for the day.
There you go. You got one.
Perfect. All right. With that, guys, let me know how you're doing this week. If you have any further questions, you just reach out to me. If you guys want a CGM, let me know. And yeah, I think that's good. And then put your numbers up, Rod.
Okay.
I know. All right. Have a beautiful night,
Thanks,
guys.
gang.
Absolutely.
care.
Take care.
Thanks.